The Katkari tribal group of India lives in abject poverty and is teetering on the brink of extinction. They are among the original indigenous inhabitants of Maharashtra and can also be found in the nearby states of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Traditionally, they are hunter-gatherers, depending on access to forests so as to fish, hunt and gather wild vegetables. Their exploitation by non-tribals is total and absolute. They have been converted into a cheap and bonded labour force. The police department harasses them at will. While the Indian government would deny the presence of slavery, the Katkaris are slaves and much more. All development programs, government or non-government, bypass the Katkaris. This video is an appeal to the international community to save the Katkaris from extinction. We at the Rainforest Information Centre in Australia have been supporting the work of the Academy of Development Science since the mid-80s. We were appalled to hear from ADS about the plight of the Katkaris.
They are literally like slaves. Most of them are landless. Land on which their villages are located are owned by other people. So they are forced to move anytime. They are evicted from their houses, they are evicted from their villages, and they do not have any land on which they can cultivate crops. And so over the past 2 to 3 years we have initiated a number of different programs with the Katkaris, and in this my colleague Bansi Ghevde has played a major role, because he has been working with the Katkaris for nearly 15 years now.
In March 2004, 2 of us from the Rainforest Information Centre met with Bansi Ghevde, and he took us to 5 villages and a brick kiln in order to shoot this footage. We found people living and working under appalling conditions, yet amazingly resilient and unbroken. Katkaris are socially and economically on the lowest rungs of the development ladder. Most of the families are caught up in a vicious cycle of poverty, indebtedness and bonded labour. All able-bodied men, women and children work as bonded labour in brick kilns, often in places far from their homes. Bonded labour means that poverty has forced them to borrow money for food or medicine at exorbitant rates of interest, sometimes over 300%. This, plus the fact that their masters routinely cheat them of their wages, means that the interest from the loan can never be repaid and they are permanently enslaved. Sometimes the debt is passed on to the next generation and the slavery continues there. For 8 months of the year they migrate to the brick kilns along with their children, and only the older people remain in the villages. The children have no schooling at the brickworks, and consequently the Katkari have remained largely illiterate.
As soon as the harvesting season is over, the contractor comes to the village, picks up the Katkaris forcibly, puts them in a truck and takes them to the brick unit. They are exploited a lot, not only in terms of their physical labor. At times they are beaten up for doing some very small mistakes. Sometimes people are killed. The beating is so severe. So these kind of things are never reported to the police. One thing is because these people do not have a political voice of their own. They are extremely marginalized. And secondly also because the police treat them as a criminal tribe.
This is a legacy of the Criminal Tribes Act, introduced by the British in India in 1871 to deal with the supposed criminal tendencies of itinerant or wandering tribes. It identified about 150 tribes throughout India as criminal, giving the police wide powers to arrest their members and monitor their movements. Under this act, just being born into one of those 150 tribes defined you as a criminal. Although these laws were repealed after India's independence, harsh discrimination by police, judiciary and the general population continues unabated.
And so if there's any crime committed against them, they do not have much voice, either with the police or the judiciary or the political systems. And hence the exploitation goes on.
Though it was only March, temperatures approached 40 degrees centigrade by 9 or 10 in the morning. And at the brick kiln that we visited, we filmed a stream of women carrying headloads of bricks that must have weighed 80 to 100 pounds each, and also children as young as 7 or 8 sharing the back-breaking burden. We dared to go to this particular kiln only because the owner was away at the time. Bansi and Rajiv had explained that it would be far too dangerous for ourselves and the Katkari to try and film the larger and more violent brick kiln sites. On the 21st of February 2004, for example, 6 Katkari men were badly beaten up by a contractor and his men at a brick unit in Panvel on the pretext that one of the Katkaris sought a day's leave to visit his home. Bansi has incurred their wrath, as well as that of Mumbai mafia property developers, incensed that he is helping the Katkari to try and regain their now very valuable land.
People see him as a threat because he is preventing them from taking away land which is very cheap, or he is fighting for the Katkaris to get good wages on the brick units. People have tried to attack him with swords on 2 occasions. He had to hide here for the night, and in the morning he had to go away to another place. He realizes that this work will always be risky, but he believes in the cause, so he is willing to take these risks and do the work.
Katkaris continue to be hunter-gatherers when they are not working as bonded labour on brick kilns. They have tremendous knowledge about uncultivated foods like fish, crabs, animals, birds, tubers, rhizomes, wild vegetables, fruits and nuts. ADS has done a study to understand the hunting-gathering skills of Katkaris, and the results provide an amazing insight into the ingenuity and wisdom of Katkaris for survival. Katkaris are expert fishermen, swimmers, divers, archers and marksmen. They are famous for their strength, endurance and hunting-gathering skills. The loss of forests has had an adverse effect on the diets of Katkaris due to the diminished availability of uncultivated foods. The food and nutritional security of Katkaris are thus critical issues. People report that Katkaris, who were the strongest physically amongst tribal groups in the Raigad-Tanate region, have today been reduced to the weakest due to food shortages, poor diets and alcoholism. There are some 150 different tribal groups in India who have been designated primitive by the central government, and they number about 4 million out of some 80 million tribal people in the country. They are defined by their, quote, economic backwardness, low levels of literacy, declining or stagnant population, and pre-agricultural level of technology. The central government, as well as the state government of Maharashtra, have long been aware of the problems and suffering of the so-called primitive tribal groups. There is all manner of legislation in place, but the political will to implement the legislation seems invariably to be lacking.
This also is a derogatory term to call them primitive. What criteria is used to determine that a set of people is primitive? In reality, they are very progressive. They are outward looking and they love to be with nature, and they have a very sustainable lifestyle.
Katkaris are cheated, exploited and made to work under subhuman conditions in the brick kilns. Sexual exploitation of Katkari women is common. The exploitation by brick contractors, harassment by police and absolute negligence by government have left hardly any space or scope for the Katkaris to survive and prosper in an unequal world. The community today lives in abject poverty and desolation. Over 90% of Katkari families are landless, and this is at the root of their problems, as it means that they cannot grow food for their subsistence and are forced into debt and bondage. This landlessness is in spite of decades of government land reform legislation specifically to redistribute surplus lands to those most in need. Land reform laws from the early 70s allow a person to own no more than 12 acres of productive land, and any land beyond that is confiscated and distributed to the landless poor. In fact, a great deal of land has been granted to Katkari families and communities, but only on paper. A large part of ADS's work is to pressure the relevant government agencies to follow through, one village at a time, with the necessary surveying and demarcation, so that the Katkaris can have title and possession to the land that is rightfully theirs.
The Katkaris were left out. They never fought for their rights. And people found it very easy to evict them from the lands that they were cultivating. So today we find that a large number of Katkaris are without any access to land. They are totally landless.
One of the villages we visited, Mandavani, is typical. Close to the road, less than 2 hours from Mumbai, today it is prime real estate. In 1976, the government handed over 47 acres to 8 Katkari families there, but the surveying and demarcation never took place, and though their names are registered as owners in the legal record, they were never given the deeds and never gained physical possession of their land. Then a land developer from Mumbai encroached.
And he took possession of the entire land. And then by giving bribes and so on, he managed to keep the land in his own control. And although the Katkaris kept saying that this was their land, nobody really bothered to look into it.
So Bansi started helping them 3 years ago, and now the minister has asked the state government why the land has not been given to the Katkari. The district administration has started to do a survey of these lands on a priority basis, and Bansi is on the government committee dealing with the matter. The second village we visited was Talavali, where land has been given on lease to the Katkari, a group of 27 families who have been given 56 acres of Dali land. Dali land is land that tribals have been hunting and gathering since time immemorial. Since the 19th century, this has been formalised by giving communities a communal lease on the land, and then in 1971 the government ordered that communities should be given full ownership of such leased land. In Raigad district alone, there is 32,000 acres of leased land which belongs to the tribals.
But in 2004, when we are sitting here, even today, those people do not have ownership of that land.
The same kind of system is also found in the neighbouring Thane district, where more than 15,000 families have been given lease of over 30,000 acres of land. So 30,000 or more tribal families in these two districts have been given a lot of land.
But because of inability of the government to implement its own order, the land still does not belong to them.
In Talavali, Bansi has taken up the struggle to force the government to implement their order of 1971 and give ownership of the land back to the Katkari. Then we went to Varne village, where 40 families have been given land but have been powerless to gain possession of it. An outsider has encroached on the land and fenced it off so they have no access. With no land, they are forced to walk 6 kilometres to the forest to gather firewood and then another 6 kilometres to sell it, earning maybe 75 cents a day for their toil. Bansi has started proceedings which should soon see their land finally in their possession.
They said that if we get the land, we don't want anything else. We'll cultivate it properly, we'll not give it to anyone, and we'll grow all our crops on the land, so we don't have to work for anybody. Now this is a case of a village where the villagers are highly motivated to really take up that land and start growing their own crops.
Once again, Bansi has brought this situation to the government's attention, who say they will deal with it on a priority basis. Bansi is working in this way with hundreds of other Katkari villages. The other part of ADS's work is to help the Katkari have pride in their culture and to revitalise the old ways. They staged an impromptu concert for us, and we had the privilege of witnessing Vital Laxman Bahoy play the tali, an instrument that is, as far as we know, unique to the Katkari. When we first heard about the plight of the Katkari, the Rainforest Information Centre determined to respond both by helping fund ADS's proposals to alleviate the situation and by finding other NGOs and individuals to partner with us. The Onaway Trust from England is an NGO that supports the struggles of Indigenous tribal peoples worldwide. One of their representatives visited ADS and the Katkari, and now the Onaway Trust has pledged £5,000, over $9,000, to ADS's Katkari campaign on a dollar-for-dollar basis. That is, every dollar up to this amount that is raised by others will be matched by Onaway. And with the help of this video, we are hoping that many groups and individuals will raise money to support ADS and the other Indian NGOs working for the Katkaris. This money will be used to recover the land stolen from them, to rescue them from bondage in the brick kilns, and for literacy and training programs. ADS's detailed funding proposals may be found at the Rainforest Information Centre website. Donations to help the Katkari are tax deductible in the UK, Australia, US and Canada. Contact us for details.